All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Within Tolerance. This is episode 60, and we're joined with Easton from Moria Manufacturing. And let's just get right into it, Easton. So, how did you get into manufacturing? Tell us, was there any influence at a younger age? Did you just like to make things? And how did you get to where you're at now?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me, guys. It's pretty cool to be on here. I remember when you, Peyton, were kind of just starting off and thinking about starting a podcast, and it's pretty cool to see kind of where it's become. First off, I'd like to say you guys definitely chose the wrong guest. Um, I'm not only a lathe guy, but I'm also a Makita fan. So,
Oh, okay. Well, we
yeah,
can just end it here. That's good
yeah,
to
I guess we're just gonna have to
Next
we're gonna have
week,
to end
we'll be
that.
back with Dylan and I.
know.
T-shirts coming soon.
Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, I guess to kind of answer your question, I've definitely been kind of just into making things. I've always been making things with my dad and kind of just doing things with my hands. But kind of getting into manufacturing really started probably 2014, like kind of my freshman year in high school. Um, my dad and I bought a Precision Matthews PM25, and then we converted it to CNC over the course of like a year. And that was kind of my first taste into machining. And it was one of those things where you kind of start playing with it and you're learning feeds and speeds and everything. You're like, wait a second, maybe I could make some money doing this. And that's kind of where that got started. So I just immediately started kind of trying to think of what I could make with it. And it kind of spiraled from there. And I mean, it's been a deep, deep rabbit hole from there. So that's kind of where I got started. So kind of from there, I went from that and used that for a couple of years until probably November of 2017 is when I kind of started shopping for a more industrial machine, see what was that kind of out there, and I was just looking to see if I could maybe get something. At that point, I had started working at a local shop on like a school kind of program where I would take the last 2 hours of the day and I would get to go work at a shop that's related to kind of what career path I was looking at going into. And so I had been running a lot of Haas machines, a Mazak, a couple other various brands of machines. And it was kind of at a point where I was like, well, it would be pretty cool to kind of maybe get into more of the industrial side of machines. And what I ended up kind of landing on was I found a Miyano TSV 33, which would be kind of like the equivalent of like a Brother S300 or like a RoboDrill short bed. So that guy, I've still got that. That's actually sitting to my left, probably a couple hundred feet to my left right now. So I ended up buying that machine um, in about November, and I didn't have space for it. After I bought it, my parents said, "No, you're not putting that in our garage because you're going to crack our floor." I was like,
Damn.
"Well, what if I repair the cracks in the floor?" No, no, you can't put it in our garage. It's like, okay.
Can I
Guess
build you a new garage?
yeah, I was like, well, guess I'll have to find a shop. So then I kind of just contacted the dealer that I ended up buying the machine from, and I said, "Hey, how long can you guys kind of hold this machine for me?" And they were like, I guess we can kind of keep it. Usually our customers kind of take the machine right away. But so it seemed like about a year, but it was really only like a month. But I toured and probably searched for, I don't know, about 10 different shops, kind of toured through, and ended up settling on this place that was about 600 square feet. Um, and it was, if you kind of picture like a storage unit, like you go to like a U-Haul, it was kind of like that, but it was about 12 foot wide, 50-foot deep. And that's the 600 square feet. It had 100 amps of three phase. Um, when I toured it, when I signed the lease and everything, I said is there three phase? Because I really need three phase power for this machine. They're like, yeah, 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 yeah. There's definitely three phase, three phase, three phase, three phase, three phase. I was like, oh, cool, sweet. I can look over the fact that there's no internet, there's no bathroom, there's no man door, there's just a bay door and a big open building, no running water, nothing. I was like, as long as there's three phase, this will work perfectly. I signed the lease. I get the machine delivered. Um, Hindsight, I did my own rigging on that one. That was pretty scary. Lifting that 5,000 pound machine into a shop. Not the smartest decision I've ever made, but moved in. I opened up the electrical panel and there's only two legs in here.
Oh no.
I said to my landlord, I was like, "You said there was a three phase in this building." He goes, "Oh, did I say three phase? I really just meant 240 volt."
Oh my god.
And I was like, "All right, well, so either I'm going to void this lease right now, or you're going to buy me a phase converter." And so they definitely didn't want me backing out of the lease, so they paid for half of the phase converter.
Wow.
Um, so I ended up getting a phase converter. So that phase converter is pulling 60 amps, and I've got a 100 amp service. So I was pretty much tapped out. Um, so it was a 12-foot wide, 50-foot deep building with one machine at the very end of it, and
With
that's about
lots of three-phase power.
it. Yeah. So that kind of lasted for about a year. It was actually like a 14-month lease, but it was kind of an interesting situation. It was like 30 minutes from my house, so it was a pretty big drive every day. Um, I didn't get a great use out of that shop as a result, and it it was kind of more of a storage facility. I definitely made parts and everything, but it was kind of good to just get out of there. Um, Kind of that around that time, right before IMTS of 2018, I got kind of acquainted with. I think both of you guys know John over at High Tech Machining,
Mhm.
um, and I ended up first kind of getting in contact with John because my Miano's coolant tank rusted through, and I came in one day to just a pool of coolant on the floor.
Jeez.
So I had to replace the coolant tank, and you can't really buy a coolant tank for a mill that's no longer made nor supported by Miano. So I was looking around, and it turns out you can fit a brother coolant tank underneath a Miano.
Really?
Um, yeah. So right now I've got the 150-liter coolant tank off of a brother S700 on my machine.
Hmm.
Um, and so I kind of put out a plea on Instagram, and I was like, "Hey, anyone have a coolant tank?" And that's kind of when I got in contact with John because he had put a chip conveyor on one of his machines, so he had a spare coolant tank lying around. And then after that, at one point, I was talking to John, and he said, "Hey, I've got this not working Miano BNC 34." And at that point, I was like, "Wow, well, my TSV 33 is a fantastic machine. I wonder how their lathes are." Um, so I it was a machine with a dead spindle drive, and I ended up buying it from him. It shipped all the way from California in a box truck. Um, Took me about three and a half hours to get it out of the box truck. So that poor semi driver was sitting there waiting while I was trying to pull out this lathe. Turns out lathes are a lot lower center of gravity than mills, so picking it with a forklift is pretty sketchy. Um, and I picked it up. It was actually a kind of a cool situation. Side note, which is that the only really big thing about that location that I had, that first shop, is it was a truck repair place. And so they had a bunch of forklifts that I could use at any time, and some of them were huge. So I was able to do my rigging for both of my machines on that one.
I was wondering how you just miraculously,
Yeah.
rented a forklift or something. So that makes
Yeah,
more
no,
sense.
it was a great deal. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. That was probably my third time driving a forklift ever. But yeah, I mean, It was one of those like construction reach lifts, so I could stick it into the truck and pick the lathe. But yeah, I ended up getting it out, and what I did is I just set the lathe in the corner of the shop and never did anything with it, just because I knew I was planning on moving. So that was like September, and then I didn't end up moving until January, um, or sorry, February. And what kind of happened ended up happening in that situation was, so at my day job at the time, I was working for another shop, um, and the landlord that owns the whole building that shop is in, I was I got along with him, and I just kind of chatting with him, and he was asking about my current lease, and he was like, "You're paying $600 for 600 square feet?" He's like, "That's expensive." He's like, "I can do better than that." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "You can get me in a building with heat, lights, air condition, or like a bathroom and everything?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "We got some space in the corner. You could probably just lease that." And so as soon as my lease was up at my first shop, I kind of then moved into the building I'm currently in, but in kind of just a corner. So I had about 400 square feet. So I downsized, but the configuration was changed. So I had like a more even square shop, so I could fit more machines. If that makes sense. Um, it was like, instead of it being such a narrow hallway where you can only put one machine at the end, I could put like machines next to each other and facing each other.
Right.
Um,
And you had three phase, I'm guessing. Actual
yes,
three phase.
yeah, I had 200 amps of three phase. I had a bathroom, I had internet, I had everything. So I was more than happy to move into a smaller space. That was around the time that I ended up getting the Tormach that I've got. And so that was kind of my first introduction to the kind of Tormach scene. And so at that point, I had the Miano lathe, the Miano mill, and then the Tormach 770. And so at that kind of point, I finally bit the bullet and got the spindle drive for the Miano sent out. Paid about $1,500 to get that fixed, which seemed like a lot at the time, but that I really should have done that a lot sooner. Um, and got that put into the lathe and got that guy up and running. And so that was kind of my first introduction to lathes. So when you guys were talking yesterday about are you guys going to get a lathe anytime soon? You guys might think you're mill guys right now, but get a lathe and you guys might not be mill guys anymore.
I'm not going to the dark side. Quit tempting me.
Yeah, so that was I got that lathe running and I was like, wait a second, I really like lathes a lot more. That wasn't really the reason I started liking lathes a lot more. It was at a certain point in my day job, um, they kind of just said to me, they were like, or I had a personal project. So I was running mills at my last job, and I was running mills and had a personal project where wanted to make these little air fittings, and they were like, "Yeah, you can come in on a weekend or whatever. And you're welcome to use the machine, but you kind of just have to teach yourself and teach yourself how to program it and everything." I was like, "All right." So I read the Haas ST10 manual cover to cover. I watched a bunch of CamWorks YouTube videos, and I came in on a weekend and I figured it out. And then that next week, my boss said, "All right, well, you want to move over to the lathe and set this job up?" So
Uh
uh,
oh.
then I never went back.
Oh
So
no.
yeah, so that was kind of my introduction to lathes, and then getting a lathe myself and getting that up and running only strengthened it. And so I started doing a lot more lathe parts and things. Believe it or not, I bought that lathe only to make speed handles. Um, that's it. That I figured, I was like, I'll find something else to do with this, but I need this to make speed handles. So
What on
I've
the
made it.
speed handle is made on the lathe? Because isn't it a mill part
So
as well?
I make the revolving handle. Um,
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah. So I made a couple of those, and that was cool. And I made it, and I started finding other lathe parts and things to make. And it just kind of was going from there. Wasn't using it a ton. Um, but then probably about November of 2019, I ended up deciding to kind of make a career change. And so I changed over to working for my current job, which is I work as a technical support specialist at Tormach. And so part of the thing when I was working for the kind of the previous company was that since they were a job shop, I was kind of non compete with them. So by changing employers, that kind of freed me up to start doing a little bit of contract work. And so that was a kind of a big part. And so it really spiraled out of control from there. And I now do kind of, I would say, medium to kind of high production lathe work on a regular basis. And I recently um, kind of picked up another lathe. It's a twin spindle Miano with twin turret, twin spindle. But yeah, kind of stepping back a little bit from there. At one point, this building was a huge machine shop for one customer, or not one customer, but one company. And when that company started kind of going down the drains and the original owner died, the current owners of that company and the building stepped in and bought it. So my landlord, the one who kind of got me the first space in this building, said to me, "Hey, there's this 15,000 square foot warehouse that we're going to be splitting into 4 units, each with their own bathroom, plumbing, kind of configurable how you want because we haven't built them yet. Do you want dibs on one of the units since we're going to be building it and we haven't built them yet?" I said, uh, that sounds like a lot of space. I don't know if I'll need that amount of space. And kind of stewed on that for a while and ended up saying, yeah, you know what? I will take one of those units. So this unit was supposed to be done October of 2019. They didn't start construction until November of 2019. So it got a little bit kind of screwed up in that sense. So I was in the old shop a little bit longer than was comfortable because I started getting more equipment and just started kind of outgrowing that space. And finally, probably March of this year, I moved into this current space. And what's really nice about this space is I've got 200 amps of like very clean 3 phase because it's brand new circuit that got brought in from the city. They even put in a transformer down the street for these shops. Um, I've got my own bathroom. I've got AC in the shop and in the office separate, so they're separate climate control. And when I say office, that's because I'm kind of sitting in it and I use it as an office, but it's more of like office/inspection room because it's where I've got my Brown and Sharp CMM. I've got my surface plate and all my inspection equipment as well. And then yeah, it's about 2,400 square feet, and it's again like a very narrow hallway, but it's wide enough that it doesn't feel like a narrow hallway because it's about 25 feet wide and about 100 feet deep. So it's one of the best decisions I've ever made was moving into this shop. It was really a huge step in the right direction. And
So recently, oh, sorry to cut you off. Keep going.
oh no, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, so this is all very recent that this is happening.
Yeah. So this has really started taking off since probably November of last year is when it kind of gone into warp speed. Um, it's it's uncomfortable for sure, and I'm sure you guys know the feeling. But it's pretty fun too. It's like I really get to do exactly what I want to do every day. It's really a fun job, and it's definitely what I want to do for the rest of my life.
So that was
Um,
kind of my question is, so day to day, so what do? You still work at Tormach? do mainly job shop work? I know you have some products. Talk a little bit about all that. How does that kind of work into your like daily or weekly routine?
Yeah, so I do have a normal day job. So I work 8 to 5 at Tormach. I love my job there. It's a fantastic group of people. I know some of them are actually listening to this, so um, all of those guys are fantastic, and it's a really great group of people. And it's a super fun job. And then I come home to my shop, or not home. I drive to my shop, and I spend the night here working on a combination of job shop work and products. I think I saw a question in there. Somebody's wondering about the BT30 tool tightening fixtures. Those are coming. It's been hectic with a lot of lathe job shop work lately, but some big things are happening in the next month or so that are going to allow me to kind of expand on that and get some of those products more. So yeah, so I do. I definitely do my own products with the Renishield. I do in-house powder coating, and I sub out the actual cutting and bending of those because I don't have 1.2 million for a laser, and I don't have like 500,000 for a good press break. So
Oh, come
uh,
on. That's like one lathe job right there.
yeah, it depends on the lathe job, but so it's a cool mix. It's like the job shop work is one of the ways I like to think about it is it's maybe not what I want to do the whole time. I don't know if I want to do job shop work for the rest of my life, kind of thing. But it's really a cool skill builder. It's like you constantly get thrown a job that you have no idea what you're going to do on it, and you get to figure it out, and you get to talk to tooling vendors and get the tooling that you need and learn new things and new materials and everything. I mean, I've built a pretty good relationship with Iskar, and I'm a big Iskar fanboy. Iskar makes some really good turning tools, and and it's a lot of fun doing job shop work. Um, there's also always that added stress that you didn't design it. So what if you can't make what they want? But I have some really good customers who really let me kind of help them and work with them on things. If I say, this doesn't really make sense, can I change this a little bit? And they say, yeah, that's totally fine as long as you make the part. Or and so I've got some really fantastic customers. So it's really a positive experience there.
Yeah, I
So
definitely agree. Job shop work is like, warp speed learning. I work with a bunch of guys who are like from a production background, and they're constantly like, "Oh, I don't know how to like do this," or "We got to think on this," and it's like I've already got 30 different ideas on how I'm going to tackle this problem. Let's just
yeah,
start working through them. Like,
it's such a learning experience because you quote out these parts that you're not 100% sure you can make, and then you make it work anyways.
yeah,
um,
yeah, exactly.
Especially when I've got a 2 axis lathe, and I've made some parts on that 2 axis lathe that I'm still to this day not sure how I made them on a 2 axis lathe. um, and it's it's a constant learning experience. It does help that I have a Miyano lathe that is I turn it on every morning and it's in the same spot as it was the last night. There's no thermal growth. There's no thermal change. It's kind of like cheating.
That's what
Um,
Justin was saying when he was on here too. Is that he's always
I
surprised how accurate they are.
It's crazy, and I've had fantastic luck with them. It's too bad that they don't make mills anymore. When Citizen bought them out, they stopped all production of mills, so they don't make drill and tap centers anymore. But it's pretty crazy. My Miyano TSV33, I can rigid tap at 5,000 RPM on a 1993 machine.
Yeah,
Um,
that's pretty insane.
so it's it's a great machine. It's got some servo tuning problems that are a big nightmare. It was the episode with Jake Yates where he's talking about his Mori. Is That was painfully relatable when he's talking about all the just don't ever turn it off because you don't know what will happen when you turn it back on. and it's especially when I don't even have the manuals for that machine, and I've never been able to get them.
Oh,
Um,
geez, that makes it
so
the worst.
yeah, it's a scary experience. Um, but yeah, so a couple months ago, back in about June, a sale came up locally for another Miano. So it's a lot bigger than my first Miano. It's double the weight, um, double the spindles, double the turrets. Uh, it's a big machine, and that it was expensive to move. It was expensive to hook up to electrical, but I'm excited to kind of get to dive into that. I haven't really gotten to use it yet, but it's going to be really fun to have another Miano lathe in the shop.
Well, with all the work you've been doing lately, it sounds like you really needed another lathe spindle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really uh, it helps out to have more lathe spindles, and it's some of these parts that I'm doing are or could be done as two op parts and or a single op and a sub spindle lathe. So that'll be really kind of cool.
And it has
It's
live tooling too, right?
it technically does. I don't know if I'll ever be able to use the live tooling. Live tooling requires mounting this like spider looking thing to the front of the turret, and then your live tool holders mount into that. And that spider looking thing doesn't really come up on eBay very often. I don't have one. And then the live tooling holders are also pretty hard to get a hold of. So I don't know if I'll ever be able to use it, but it would be pretty cool if I do get a hold of that kind of thing.
We've gotten lucky lately with some eBay finds, so you know,
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's always a chance, and I love the feature on eBay where you can save a search. So I've got a search saved for that and everything. So um, yeah, hopefully I'll get lucky and get some live tooling going on that guy. It doesn't have a y axis, but I'll still be able to do things like cross drilling or flat milling kind of thing.
awesome.
Yeah, and then that kind of brings us to August of 2020, which as of yesterday, I put the signed all of the paperwork in for the a Brother Speedio S700. So that should be arriving in the next couple weeks. So that's going to be really cool.
Congrats, dude. I'm super
Yeah,
pumped for you.
seriously.
Yeah, no, that's been in the works for a really long time, and it finally came up where kind of with everything going on with IMTS and everything, a sale kind of popped up that was a little bit too hard to pass up.
Yeah, with your issues with your Miano, it sounds like you needed another industrial mill to kind of get through your own products and stuff like that. So
Yeah, exactly. So currently, the majority of the milling that I do is on my Tormach, and while that's a fantastic machine, and I've never really understood why people have issues with cycle time or anything like that on the Tormach, I was running some parts the other day where I had a 30-second cycle time on a Tormach with milling with a 1/16th end mill. So I've never really understood that kind of argument of it, and that's not even coming from me being an employee at Tormach. It's truly it's if you know what you're doing with those machines, you can really push them pretty hard. Um, but the kind of major issue for me is I never bought it with a tool changer, so I hand load all tools in that machine. So if a part requires more than like two or three tools, it gets tough. And so it's time to get either a tool changer on that machine or maybe step up to another machine or fix the Miano. And kind of with those three options, kind of my considerations were, well, the other problem that I every once in a while run into on that 770 is I run out of Y travel. Um, I don't usually run out of X travel, but Y travel is really where I start getting into kind of a bind. And so I was kind of thinking about going down that route or repairing the Miano, but again, the Miano's got a little bit less X travel than even the Tormach does, and so it just kind of made sense to go that way. So I definitely considered the Robo Drill Eco. I'm a big Fanuc control guy. I have used a number of different controls, and a lot of people knock on Fanuc controls, but for some reason they just make a lot of sense to me. So it might have something to do with the fact that the only that my Miyano TSV33, when that showed up, I spent about a month poking through all the menus trying to figure out even how to load a program into that machine. So I'm completely self-taught on Fanuc controls. I've since kind of run some Doosan machines and some Akuma machines and everything at school, and it's still by far my favorite control. So it was a little bit of a sad thing getting the Speedio, but I think overall the Speedio is a little bit better of a machine, and it was kind of the conversation that you guys had with Greg was kind of one of the final straws in making that decision. So
Yeah, but I think the point of that discussion too was like you really can't go wrong. Like obviously I'm biased. I love my Speedio. I think he made an excellent choice, but like between a Robo Drill, a new Robo Drill, and a new Brother, like they're both fantastic machines, and you're not going to be upset either way.
no, and I mean, you got Elton Instruments on Instagram. He's got that, I think, a Robo Drill Eco, and he kicks ass with that machine, and
Yeah,
that's
he
really
makes
cool.
killer parts on that thing. Yeah, so
And
that's so awesome though. I'm really looking forward to you getting that and starting to play around with that.
yeah, it'll be an interesting race with Peyton to see who gets probing first.
You didn't get probing?
Nope, I got a really bare bones
Let's
machine.
go. No probe, gang.
Yeah, yeah, I
Dylan,
really
whip it out.
I can't wait. I cannot wait for 2 months from now to be able to ask Easton. So, what's the best thing in your shop, and why is it a probe?
Yeah, it was just one of those things where it was like I was just kind of trying to get in the door with the Speedio, so I got fairly bare bones. I just ended up getting I got the 16,000 RPM spindle, I got the 21 tools, um, plumbed in for through spindle coolant, but that's come standard with all of the 16K machines. So the only option that's on my PO is the MPG, and I have to say that was one of the most painful options to select.
Yeah,
You shouldn't have to spend $900 for the ability to jog your machine.
they should just include it in the price. I've been saying that for a long time. It's ridiculous. Like don't make me look at it. I don't care if it's in the price.
Yeah, exactly, and that's really the only option I got. I figured any option that I kind of want in the future, I can always get later. The ones you really can't get, or you can't get a bigger tool changer that I know of. You can't get a faster spindle that I know of, but you can get Big Plus later. You can get probing later. You can get a fourth axis later. So I just really kind of got the bare bones machine, and we'll see kind of how it treats me.
It's
Yeah,
the way to do
but
it.
and you skipped out on the ones that you can do yourself too, like the coolant washdown gun. You can do yourself for a lot cheaper. I just finished that. The lights, we had planned on doing that because I mean, you can do lights for like a couple $100.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to admit anything if my brother service tech is listening, but that's definitely the way to go.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think that it would even void your warranty. Like to do lights, you hook up to the part on the board that says lights. Like that, it's that easy, and you just drive.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think I saw that Austin had figured out the spindle override switch and some other things like that, which is I
Yeah,
think it's pretty cool how big of a community there is on Instagram. That's another really big positive towards the Speedio.
totally. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of guys in small shops with them. So,
Yeah,
well,
they're the perfect machine to kind of fit in your garage too.
yeah.
It's a small machine,
Oh yeah.
and you can have a tool that's longer than 7 inches.
Do you
Oh,
really want to start this?
that's some subtle shade right there. Wow, or not even
It's okay,
subtle.
Peyton.
As the host of this podcast, I will remain silent.
It's okay, Peyton. I've done it too. So
Oh
I
my
used to
god.
run a DT1 at my last job, and I didn't know that you couldn't because or it was I did know that you couldn't have a tool that longer than 7 inches, but it was one of those situations where I'm coming off of a late night running my Miyano, where I can have a 9 inch long drill, and then I wake up in the morning, I go to work, and I'm setting up the DT, and I just throw a drill in a drill chuck, and pop, there goes one of the tool pockets.
Oh man.
Well,
So,
glad I'm not the only one.
no, I think it's a common thing on. I think there were. At least you didn't do what one of my coworkers did, where he went down into a casting with a 3-point bore probing, but he
Ugh.
set his Z depth to lower than the probe tip length, so the probe body went into the bore.
Oh no.
Yeah, that did.
Oh no.
That probe was gone.
Yeah,
Oh,
see, if that happened to me, I just probably wouldn't replace it.
oh, that's so
We didn't. We used edge finders
Yeah.
after that.
terrible. Oh, that's rough.
We had the OTS, which was always a weird situation where we would use the OTS to set the tool length, but then we use the tool to set the Z height.
Yeah.
So it was yeah. I mean, it's pretty exciting. It's pretty scary, but I'm sure it's gonna work out, and it'll be really cool to have some more milling capabilities in the shop. Maybe I'll get converted back the other way.
Totally. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, I think you're going to love it regardless. Whether you become a mill guy again remains to be seen. But at least you're going to have something pretty capable to knock out those BT30 tool tightening fixtures.
Exactly. So that's what I meant at the beginning of the episode. Stuff is coming to get those out faster and everything like that. So,
So,
uh,
buddy at Heinz Speed, that's your answer. He's got a new machine coming just so you can get your BT30 tool tightening fixture.
so
As many as you
yeah, I mean,
want.
that's yeah, absolutely. And I mean, feel free to buy me completely out. So,
um, so I kind of wanted to step back and get the story on your old name and then where your new name for it comes from. Because right now you're
yeah.
more
So
manufacturing, and you used to be Eastex, right?
yes, that was a nightmare and a half. One of the most
I wanted to bring
expensive.
it up.
Yeah, that was one of the most expensive parts of my business in total. I've bought machines for less than that cost me to do.
Yep.
That was anyone out there thinking of starting a company, be sure that no one else is gonna. If Bob and Sally's flower shop exists, don't be worried about those guys, but be worried about maybe a larger company. So I actually registered that company name back in 2008. Um, I had that and my domain name registered. So I've definitely been on the entrepreneurial path, I guess, for a while. I didn't realize it was that at the time, and it's definitely evolved for what the company does. But that's been my company name since probably I was 8 years old. Um, and I was doing. I finally registered like an LLC and everything in 2017, and under the name Eastex. And at probably about no January 2019, I get this email, and the first time I read the email, I was like, "Is this a joke?" It was a very lawyerish email that said, "Hi, we find that you are in violation of our trademark, and you have 30 days to change your name." And I was like, "Okay, I guess I need to find a lawyer." So I found a lawyer, and essentially all I wanted to do was say, okay, I guess I will change my name, even though I was actually technically by I was in the legal right and everything. Their name was very similar to mine, but wasn't the same exact spelling. An important distinction to remember is my company was Eastex, not a plural. That's a singular noun, kind of thing. I think their company was East Tech, and so I essentially was just needing to send them a letter that said, okay, yes, I will change my name. That was an expensive email to send, because you have to send that they're essentially they were fishing to kind of create a lawsuit with me. So I needed to send back an email that kind of conveyed that I'm not interested in getting sued, but also I will change my name. here's how much time I give you to, or here's how much time I will kind of take to change my name, etc. So that was part of the expense, but then it kind of spiraled from there where it was like I needed to, all of my inventory that was laser marked with my logo on it, couldn't sell that anymore. Um, uh, I kind of went through the name change, which is a certain fee to change your kind of name, and all the way kind of down through that line of various things I needed to do. Needed to get a new domain name, needed to get all sorts of those kind of factors. So I kind of slowly started going through that. I came in well within their kind of deadline of when they needed me to change over. Um, and it was just one of those situations where I thoroughly vetted it out with my new name. And it took a couple months where it was like it just didn't even feel real that my new name. It was like so hard when somebody would say, "Hey, you're from Moria Manufacturing." I was like, "Who?" Oh,
Dude, I've
and then
been through that too. It's
I
weird.
was like, "Oh wait, yeah, that's me. Never mind." Um, so that was a big changeover. And then a couple of months later, I get an email and from the same company, and they said, "Hey, we noticed in your website we see a picture with that logo in the background. We need you to take that down." I'm like, "Are you guys serious right now? It's a picture of a product, and in the background there's my sticker." I'm like, "Oh my god!" So then I had to change photography pictures. I'm so glad it's behind me. It's just that was a huge. It was one of those few times where you're like, should I even be going down this business path? But it was part of kind of what kept me going is it's going to sound really stupid, but the Instagram machinist community is such a positive group of people who were so understanding at that time, and it was everyone was totally willing to just go with the flow, and it was really cool. So I'm obviously completely happy with my name now, and it's a little disappointing that I had to give up that name that I had had for so many years and had such a history with. But it doesn't change who my company is. So it's it doesn't matter if my company is named Bob or anything like that. I mean, it's still my company. So
Yeah, exactly. And you got through it, which is nice. That's crazy though. Like, I can't imagine that.
yeah, no, it was a big problem, and it's behind me, and I'm glad it's behind me.
For sure. So where did Moria come from?
It was actually just a suggestion from my dad. My dad, we were sitting brainstorming names and just kind of coming up with them. My dad goes, "What about Moria Manufacturing?" Or I think my dad said Moria Machining, and I was like, "What about Moria Manufacturing?" And it just kind of stuck. There's
Nice.
not a huge story behind it or anything like that, but it's that's about it.
Well, I'm glad that the change went through. All right. I was thinking back, like I think the first time I ever heard about you was in a Saunders video, at like one of his open houses, maybe or something like that. And you had
Yeah,
brought some of your product there, and like I was like, oh, I don't know who this kid is, and like it's just such a weird route that it took because we met in person for the first time when you were out here on Tormach business, and it's just like it's such an interesting route to go from like, oh, it's he's some kid in a Saunders video to like, oh, now we DM and stuff all the time, and so it's just really funny thinking back on that.
yeah, it's kind of like the whole thing of the first time Peyton and I talked, which was kind of interesting. I think neither of us realized that we were the same age,
Yeah.
and and it was just one of those things where we were having some weird, awkward conversation, and then we both realized, wait a second, I think we're the same age. And it's kind of funny too, looking back on it in middle school. I remember, oh, there's this really cool guy. One of my friends telling me he makes like Lego firearms and custom minifigures. And I think my friend had bought some of your stuff, Peyton, and
No way.
it was so funny. It was like I finally like me, and I thought you were some like 40-year-old dude just sitting in his
Oh,
basement
wow,
making
thanks.
Legos. And I was like, wow, that is so cool, but also so weird. And then it was such a relief to realize that you were kind of the same age.
And he gets
And
harassed about not having a probe. What does this guy do?
Oh man. Oh, that's awesome. That is really cool. I'm glad that you made it through and you stuck with it through all that name change BS.
yeah, for sure.
Um, so another question I had for you, and I asked this to a lot of our guests, is what's the biggest hurdle or obstacle in your shop workflow right now, and what are you doing to overcome it besides getting a new mill?
Oh man, time, but that's a little too cliche. I definitely run out of time every day. I know Peyton keeps trying to get me to do 75 hard, and
Dude.
that's not going to happen with
Oh,
my current.
yes, it will. It's called 75 hard for a reason.
Yeah, I'm not going to stay up till 3 a.m.
Ah, dude,
So
I've been big chilling. I go to bed at like 1 in the morning now.
whoa, that's wild.
Oh man.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've definitely not been doing 75 hard, and there's a lot of things that I haven't been doing in that, but I've been making a big effort since January of this year to work out every day, and I'm up to like working out for like 2 hours a day, and it's really nice to just kind of clear my head, go on a run. It's actually I usually listen to your guys' podcast on my runs,
So I'm gonna
and
randomly pause next episode and just start cheering you on. Be like, "Come on, one step in front of the other. Let's go. Get that hill. Come on."
I
Oh man.
might stop and throw my phone in the water. But, uh, yeah. So I mean, I'd say time is a big one. And another probably big one is the problem that I have, which is that I keep buying machines that need work. It's like car guys buying a decrepit uh, car and fixing it up. I've got a really soft spot for old machines. Something I haven't posted on Instagram yet, but uh, kind of part of my supply chain is where if I have to send something out for secondaries more than like a few times and it's a secondary that I don't mind bringing in house, I will. So I just picked up a hone, a Sun and Hone, because some of my customers, I do some, I make some bushings and they go out for heat treat and then I have to send them to honing. So I figured I'll buy a hone and I'll bring it in house. It's a 1942 Sun and Hone,
Jesus,
and it looked like it had been through a war, which it probably had. Um,
that's awesome. Does it come
it's
with an
really cool.
employee?
It does not. It unfortunately does not. Um,
You're probably the only person your age who will know how to run a hone.
it's awesome, and I just finished restoring it the other day. I should post some Instagram pictures. It's just one of those things where I totally forget to do occasionally.
Yeah, you need to
Uh,
do that and your saw because I've only seen in progress pictures. I still haven't seen the whole thing.
that's another really awesome one. I've got a 1,000 pound manual bandsaw, which is kind of wild. It's a 1956 Johnson Model J. It's an absolute tank. Only took me 3 years to restore it.
Jesus.
Um, that's followed me from my first shop, or sorry, so that saw came from this building, which is the funniest part about it. Is that saw was in this building. It was owned by the big shop that owned this building at one point, and it was just sitting in a corner. And I asked my landlord, I was like, "Can I buy that saw from you guys?" He's like, "Well, I don't really know what it's worth, but I'll trade you for some time. Can you help me with some projects?" So I helped him with a couple of projects, and I took the saw. I rented a trailer. I brought it to my first shop, that 600 square foot one, and I was like, I'm gonna restore this saw because it's rusty, its paint's chipping, it's dirty. I was like, it won't take me that long. I'll just pop it all apart. I'll wire brush it and then I'll paint it and I'll put it back together. Well, I just got it back together, um, and I've just got to align the blade now. Um, but it was I pulled it all apart. It was by kind of luck of events. I had since it was the truck repair shop, they were repairing a lot of dump trucks and like snow plows, and they had a gigantic sandblaster. And so one day they were sandblasting a whole dump truck, and I said, "Hey, can I bring over the castings of my saw?" They were like, "Sure, throw us $50 and we'll sandblast your saw." So they sandblasted all the castings, which was a huge help. Um, then after that move, I actually put that in my parents' basement. That saw just sat in my parents' basement in pieces until I got this shop where I finally had space for it. I finished painting it and I just got it kind of back together and wired up and everything. So it's going to be really nice to not have to buy pre-cut material now.
What
It's
I've
not.
seen of it looks gorgeous. I'm really looking forward to seeing like a video of it running or something.
Yeah, and the kind of wild part about it is it's such a sturdy and just stout saw that it's traded hands twice now, but the same saw is still sold by Dake. So they still sell the exact same saw. So I can buy parts, I can buy blade guides, bearings, I can buy anything for this saw. I just bought a coolant tank for this saw for $100.
That's
Um,
insane.
yeah, and they just haven't changed the design. It's such a sturdy design. It's a pain to move because it is 1,000 pounds. But it's got a big capacity. It can do 18-inch flat, 10-inch round. So it's a little bit bigger than I do when I've got a lathe with a inch and 3/8 through bore. So I do small lathe work, and that could be used for gigantic lathe work. So
That's crazy. I'm really surprised that they're still selling that saw and parts for that saw. That makes it all that much more worth, keeping.
yeah, so I mean that the I guess the biggest hurdle would be myself buying machines that take up more of my time that I already have very little of.
Yeah, that. But you actually get them done. At least lately, you've been really on it compared to a lot of. Like, you compared yourself to car guys, but if you were a car guy, you'd hold on to that hone for about 5 more years before you started looking at it.
Yeah, it's starting to go down that path, and I got to stop myself. I just bought my first car last week, and I've already torn it apart twice.
Oh,
Um,
geez.
I put in remote keyless entry the other day, and best upgrade I've put in so far. Especially when I'm carrying material from the material supplier in my hands, I can open the trunk with a key or with a button now instead of putting down the box of stock like a normal person. Um,
You entered
so
that fly machinist mode. I see you.
Oh man, that's awesome.
yeah,
Uh, let's see other questions. Oh, so we've got a few questions on what I'm calling penis shield gate. Um,
Jesus.
Nick v Nordwick, NYDLS, I think had one. Oh no, he didn't. Let's see, who was it? Oh, Cobra Frame Builder also asked. Um, and also, yeah, they were asking, what's your opinion on AVE removing the leg in R? It wasn't intentional that Rena Shield could be so easily altered to penis shield.
Oh my god.
Oh, come on, Peyton, you
so
gotta know about this. This
No,
is
that
I
was
know. I've
definitely not
seen this.
intentional.
He sent this to me. Easton sent this to me, and I was like, "Oh God."
Yeah, so it's not intentional. Totally fine with it. It's pretty funny. I would be the world's biggest prude if I didn't find that funny. So
I
no,
find it
that's
hilarious,
hilarious.
and it's awesome
And
that AVE has one and did that.
yeah, so that story is even more interesting. So um, I didn't even know he ordered one. I had no idea. Um, and suddenly somebody messaged me on Instagram and they said, "Hey, did you see the Patreon video from AVE where he's got one of your Rena shields? That's super cool. That you sold him one." And I was like, "I sold him one?" I was like, "That's pretty cool." And so then I went back through my orders because I'm a little bit of a stalker, and I had to know. So I'm pretty sure he used a fake name because it doesn't look like a real name at all.
100%.
Um, but that was it's pretty wild, and it's pretty cool that he's been continuing to kind of show it in his videos, even though he doesn't have to. It's kind of free advertising for me, so I've always appreciated that. And then it's kind of funny that he didn't even think of the penis shield thing. It was just somebody in the comments on the first video that he posted with it said, "Hey, I bet you could turn that into penis shield." And in the very next video, he made it like a whole big deal out of like pulling out a red pen and doing it, and it was hilarious. So
You should check the Google ads or like the analytics to see if people are Googling that.
Yeah.
I don't know if people are Googling that, but I can actually track through my website that how much traffic are coming from his videos, and it's pretty cool.
That's cool.
So it is. To answer kind of your question, no, it was not intentional, but it is now. So, uh,
Oh,
and
well,
the kind of the funny part is in the original. I don't know how many Rennie shields. It's got to be a couple hundred of them. Are all painted. The logo is painted onto them.
mhm.
But that was a huge time consuming process. So they get powder coated. They'd have to get masked off and then painted again. So it was a huge problem in the kind of assembly of those. And I then finally ended up getting a vinyl cutter. And so I now vinyl cut out kind of the same vinyl you see on like trucks and it's like the same vinyl you'd find on a fire truck. So it's like super high weather resistant vinyl. It's got this ridiculously strong adhesive. The adhesive will rip off the powder coat sometimes if I
Oh,
like
jeez.
misplace the sticker. So it's even easier now because you can just take an X-Acto knife and cut the little bottom part off the R and peel it off.
Oh my gosh.
So that
So
sounds intentional.
It comes with the sticker peel here.
Yeah, it's pre-cut.
Option plus $1.
So about the Renishield, did this come from necessity? Did you destroy a OTS and you were like, "This is a good idea," or did this just come to you like you saw them around the shop and you're like, "That's an expensive thing to damage"?
Be honest.
So it's I actually haven't destroyed a OTS at all. I've never broken a stylus or anything. So it was actually at my last job. I was running a production job in it was DC 53. So it's like D2 but worse. Um,
Oh, geez.
it's this awful material. It's really hard on tools. Um, and you can only harden it by quenching it in molten salt.
Oh,
Um,
jeez.
Whoa.
yeah, it's this crazy material. But we were making some AR-15 parts out of it. But it was just beating. We didn't have any adaptive tool pads at my last job in CamWorks, so it was all just like conventional straight lines and things. So just like in Fusion, remove the adaptive function, and that was what we were kind of dealing with. It worked fine for most parts, but on these DC 53 ones, we were doing this Goering 5/8 inch end mill to rough out this material because we could only buy the material in like 1/2 inch by 1 inch bar or something, and the final part was like 1/8 of an inch wide. So there was a lot of material removal.
Yeah, geez.
So we were burning through end mills, and so I'd constantly have to set up an end mill and touch it off on the OTS. But what we had in the shop, and at the time I had no idea that this wasn't a product that Haas sold, but that shipping cover that you get, the little Z-shaped shipping cover,
Hmm.
um, my boss had just left those on, and so you'd unbolt it and pull it out of the way when you'd need to touch off a tool. And I'm the whole day I'm just 10 hours doing this, and I'm like, this sucks. I was like, I bet you could make something that like flips out of the way, like a better product. So that night I went home and I played with the sheet metal function in Fusion, and I mocked up the Renishield. I sent it to a local water jet company, and I got one cut and bent. Um, and I spray painted it, and I brought it to work. That a couple days later, I put it in the machine, and I was like, "This is way better. I like this." And then the and my the owner of the company walks by and he goes, "Oh wow, that's a really innovative solution. That's way better than the shipping cover." I'm like, "The what?" And he's like, "The shipping cover." I was like, "Oh." He's like, "Yeah, nobody had made." I was like, "I thought that was like a protective cover somebody made." He goes, "No, we just use the shipping cover in case anything gets thrown." And so that's the birth of the Renishield. Um, so it's kind of evolved from there. I mean, that Renishield's paint job lasted about 25 minutes because the coolant just ate the paint off of it. And that's when I was like, well, I guess I'll try powder coating. So I got a Harbor Freight powder coating gun and Eastwood um, powder powder coating powder, and I did the first like 25 with that, and then I was like, I ran out of powder coat one day, and so I like frantically called this powder coating shop local to me, and they were like, "Yeah, if you just want to buy a pound of powder from us, that's totally fine." I was like, "Cool, I'll drop by," and I just picked up like a pound of powder from them, and I sprayed it, and I'm like, "Whoa, this powder is way better." So then I stepped up the powder, but it wasn't until probably March of this year that I upgraded powder coating gun and booth. I powder coated the first, I don't even have a number off the top of my head, just hundreds of Renishields, all with a Harbor Freight powder coating gun and a booth that's made out of plywood and a kitchen hood from when my parents remodeled their kitchen. Um, and that worked beautifully, but that sucked compared to I've got a real powder coating gun and a real powder coating booth now, and it just makes such a difference. It's not a difference in product quality necessarily, as much as it's just I can do a batch of 20 Renishields in about an hour, just including baking time and everything. It's just so easy. So it's yeah, Renishields are it's definitely one of my best selling products, and I actually just back in July I finally got a trademark for Renishield,
Oh,
and
congrats. That's awesome.
yeah, it's pretty cool. It's definitely one of those products where I didn't know that I wasn't uh, just reinventing something, but I totally came up with something that didn't exist. And I mean, there's other solutions like some of the fifth axis. I think fifth axis is a rock lock version where you can just pull your probe in and out of the machine, which is awesome for some people. But it's nice to just be able to leave your probe kind of in there and just use the Renishield.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So we
it's a
had.
neat.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's a neat product. Like I like that you can still access it too, and still do tool breakage detection and stuff like that.
Yeah, that actually came kind of shortly after launch. Was I had a first couple customers and they were like, "This thing's great, but we don't use it too frequently because we can't use tool breakage detection." And I was like, "What's tool breakage detection?" Because people aren't using it at my shop, and they were like, "Well, it's like you come in mid-cycle and you touch off the tool," and I'm like, "Oh, so I guess there needs to be a hole in the top." So and that's kind of evolved and the holes changed a little bit throughout the versions of the Rain Shield. I think the Rain Shield's on somewhere around like version 5 now. Um, just minor little changes that you might not be able to notice and if you didn't have all of them side by side. Um, but there's actually a new Rena Shield coming out soon, and I mean I haven't talked about this anywhere else, but it's going to be for
Exclusive.
yeah. I mean it's not anything too special, and I mean so it's a Rena shield that can be mounted on a riser. So we've got a lot of people, like especially if you have like a UMC 750, where your probe is on that little like arm. Um, you can't put a rena shield on there because the rena shield mounts behind the OTS in your T slot. So I finally kind of came up with a solution that I was happy with. So it's going to be a different rena shield that's very close to the original rena shield, but it's got a different base bracket, and it'll mount underneath the Renishaw probe. So the probe pins the Rena shield down, and that allows you to have a Rena shield on a probe riser. So that'll be coming out soon. I've got to get a couple of the beta testers just to finish up testing it out, and then that'll go up on the website as well.
Awesome.
Then we had so you are 20 right now, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll be 21 in December.
Okay, so we're pretty close in age, like you said. So NYDLS asks, what are you going to do on your 21st birthday?
I'll probably be in the shop.
Literally me.
I, most of my friends, I mean, it might be a little bit different this year because of COVID, but most of my friends live in other states at this point. So one of my friends goes to school in California, one of them goes to school in Iowa, one of them goes to school a couple hours away from me. It's a ball game. So I'm probably not going to do anything with them. I don't really drink, so I'm not going to go drinking. That doesn't interest me. So I'll probably just be in the shop or just go out to dinner or do something, but nothing too major. It's not a milestone for me. Birthdays are never really anything that stands out to me any different from any other day, but I might be just kind of weird in that situation.
No, I'm the same way, dude.
Yeah, but you're weird too, Peyton, though. So
I mean, okay.
I mean, you guys do have a machining podcast, and you guys did have a lathe
Yeah,
guy come
what
on.
dummy thought of that idea?
Yeah. So all I have to say though, as well, is at the very beginning of this, I believe you said, "Hey, would you have an interest in doing a podcast with me?" And I said,
Yeah,
"I don't know."
I reached
said,
out to so many people, and then
I
out
said,
of nowhere, I'm like, Dylan's a cool guy. What about Dylan? And he's like, oh, I like that idea. And everyone else was like, no, this won't be anything. And I'm like, oh my god.
I wasn't saying it wasn't going to be anything. I said, I don't know about that one. I'm an awkward guy. I don't want to.
I
So
think it's fair to say that
hats off
Dylan
to
and
you for
I,
Dylan.
I think it's
Hats
fair
off
to
to you,
say.
Dylan, for taking one for the team. And
You heard it here first. I was his last choice. So.
I mean, we can kick you off if you want, Dylan.
Oh man.
No, but yeah, that's funny because it's very true. You were like, I was like trying to find someone like that was gonna be passionate about it. I remember this conversation too, and you're like, yeah, and I'm just like, okay.
had to let you down easy. I'm from the Midwest. You got to do things
Guess.
a little bit passive,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah, you're Canada adjacent, so you just gotta apologize.
Absolutely.
Oh man. So another question from NYDLS. Maybe he's talked to you about this, but do you do engineering school like your mom wanted, or make it happen right now job shop? And I mean, we clearly know your choice. How do your parents
So
feel about your chosen path?
kind of a quick backstory if you guys are going to hear the rest of these kind of questions from him and you're curious as to maybe why these are such specific questions. He's one of the first instant machinists I actually ever met. Before I was even on Instagram, I went to the Saunders Machine Works open house. For about 8 or 9 months I actually worked for Saunders Machine Works, doing some secret projects and things like that. And that ended up just kind of phasing out in a mutual way. So, but at the 2018 or 2017 open house, I was there for partially for the open house as well as just kind of I had to bring some projects by that I'd been working on and things like that. And my mom came with me. My mom did other things while I nerded out at the open house. And obviously, at that point, I barely had my license, let alone I just got a car. So my mom came to pick me up, and I'd been talking with him, and so then my mom kind of joined in on the conversation briefly. So um, no, I did not go to engineering school. I did go for a 1 year machining like a certification at a local college after high school. Um, Not the biggest waste of time of all time, but I didn't really get anything out of it. We were using the first year is supposed to be all manual, which I totally understand, and then the second year is CNC. But the first year we were using for the second half of the first year we were using some brand new 2019 VF2 machines. They had 3 spindle coolant. We had the 10K spindle. Um, we had the 40 tool option, and we were running high speed steel end mills and conversational. Um,
Dang.
so that gave me a little taste of what the second year was going to be, where you only get to use the Akumas for the second half or the last 3 weeks, and you don't get to use the sub spindle ever because they don't trust any of the students to do a transfer. So I kind of dipped out after the first year. It was also an interesting situation where I'd been working in a shop and owning my own shop for the probably 2.5 years before I started that. Um, so it wasn't really worth it to me to go for the second year. But I did end up going to school for a 1 year machining degree. It was a lot of fun because I got to do a lot of the shop projects that I needed to do around here, where I was like, oh, I got to make a bracket to hold this filter. Oh, I'll just do it on the Bridgeport at school, um, kind of thing. So it was a lot of fun. I met some cool people. But yeah, I didn't go to the engineering route. My parents are extremely supportive of what I do. They allow me to practically use them as a hotel um, with how frequently I'm there compared to how frequently I'm here at the shop, and it's really cool having supportive parents, and I wouldn't be where I am without my dad. Who's my dad's a biochemistry professor, which is part of the wild thing. My dad's a biochemistry professor who started going to engineering school and then took a biochem class and said, "Well, that sounds fun." So my dad is extremely mechanically inclined. He's extremely electrically inclined. I feel comfortable with pretty much any commercial electrical, residential electrical inside of machines, et cetera. I'm totally comfortable with all of that as a result of learning from my dad, and it's really cool having supportive parents and parents who really allowed me to kind of learn the way I do. I'm really not a traditional learner, and I have a feeling that you guys aren't either. I know Peyton, you went to like a special school for the second half of high school,
Oh my
right?
god.
No, no, no. Okay, I meant like you went to like a
I
machining program,
legit
right?
could not tell what you're trying to say there.
Much of a-
I'm not trying to get kicked off of the podcast right now.
I think I'm gonna have to
Uh,
clip that.
uh, but no, I meant like in the sense of just like I think a lot of people that are in this industry are maybe more hands-on learners than they are sitting in a classroom learning. And I think that was definitely me. And I couldn't, I always wanted to be an engineer until I found out that engineers sit in front of a computer all day.
I'm
And
the
then I
same
thought to
way.
myself, nope, I want to do something other than engineering. Well, I also do want to design my own things. It's like, well, so what is the option? And there's really only one option, which is own your own business where you can do the engineering and the making of the product. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have stomached 4 years of engineering school. I could barely stomach 4 years of high school. So
Okay, hold on. Let's backtrack a little bit. Let me just clear the air for myself here. I dropped out of high school halfway through and I went straight to tech school and did 2 years in machining. and got my 2-year degree in machine technology. And then I also got my high school diploma at the same time because that's just how
Yeah,
Washington State
no,
is.
sorry. That's exactly what I meant. I knew it was like a program similar to what I had, which I ended up actually backing out of. So that whole story where I was saying I was taking the 2 hours a day to go work at my day job.
I kind
That
of
I
remember you
my
talking to me at this point. You were like still in school, but like you were like wanting out.
Yeah, so it was an interesting situation where I was supposed to do this youth apprenticeship, and I would go to a machine shop and I'd say, "Hey, are you guys interested in taking me on as a youth apprentice?" And they would always say, "No, we don't have any openings." And that happened at like 5 local shops, and there are about 6 local shops. So the last shop, I tried something different. I said, "Hi, are you guys looking to hire?" And they said, "Yeah, absolutely."
Wow.
So I didn't really do the youth apprenticeship. I got the 2 hours a day off, but I didn't do like the traditional youth apprenticeship program. I just got to go to work kind of thing. Um,
Nice. Yeah, I
so
was unpaid for, I don't know, 6 or 8 months before I got paid for what I was doing. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd necessarily call it getting paid at what I was getting paid, but I was definitely getting paid. So
oh man. So you both went to special school and are now
All right,
owning
old
business.
man.
hey, wait. I
Yeah,
seem to recall that you and Brad both went to special school as well.
yeah, but that's not what we're talking about here. I went to all of high school and then I went to special school. Okay.
Boring.
So another question we have from Daryl, and I think this is him. I'm really hoping that I'm not misrepresenting somebody else. And it was one that he wanted us to ask all of our guests, and that was shop superstitions. So like the example he gave is like, oh, the second you throw out a fixture is the second you're going to get an order for that part.
That was definitely true. Then the other shop superstition was I was not going to talk about the Speedio unless the paperwork was signed yesterday. So, because I was convinced that the Speedio wasn't going to get delivered or it was going to get like ejected from the truck and smashed if I had talked about it before the paperwork was signed. So that's
Ejected.
it.
Or they're
Hey,
going
I,
to be like,
I
oh, actually, we forgot 20 grand in the price.
Ah,
We got to
shoot.
take that
We
back.
sent you
yeah,
a
it was going to
robo
be
drill. I hope you're happy.
we. I would have been okay with that. Or I was just trying to prevent what happened to Jeff happening to my brother. So
Oh, where it was like some random guy with an RV
yeah,
transporting your truck. Yeah, yeah, that would be terrible.
so I actually put in the PO. I said must be on an air ride semi, flatbed semi.
There you
I
go.
was like, I'm not taking any chances on this one. Um, but I don't know what other shop superstitions. Let's see. Uh, Not necessarily a shop superstition, but that's enough coolant in the coolant tank. That's definitely not enough coolant in the coolant tank.
Yeah, or if you only buy one tool, it's always going to break, and if you buy two, you're not going to break one.
That's
Exactly.
so
No, it
true.
was
That one's true. 100%.
that's so true. I was like, um, the other day I ran these stainless steel parts, and I bought these little tiny end mills because I did slot stainless, and I was like, ooh, I'm just gonna buy 2 end mills for the first article, and then I'll buy more if I need them, kind of thing.
Hmm.
I broke the first end mill on the first part. And then I was like, oh man, I got better to be able to get this first article done with this last end mill. So I got the first article done, sent it out. Then I ran the rest of the huge production run. And then I started doing the op where I needed to mill the slot. I didn't break that second tool ever again. And I bought 3 more of the end mill just in case. So
Yep.
now I've got 3 more of that end mill plus the one that didn't break throughout all those parts.
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. When I bought two 3/8 roughers when I did those that 304 exhaust manifold, and I was like, oh man, I gotta have an extra because I know I'm gonna burn one up like doing my test part. Well, both of them are still running. I've run that one through 3 other stainless jobs, totally fine. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, of course it would just last forever because I bought two.
Is it just me, or when you
Um,
break that first one and you open that second one up, you kind of look at it different? And you kind of hold your hands out like you're about to give like God like your lifelong diary or something, and you're like, please.
exactly.
You're like, all right, I'm gonna put this in the tool holder real slow.
That's when you like pat your machine on the head and you say, "Be a good machine today."
Yeah,
Yeah.
you clean its windows twice.
You wax it.
Oh, that's one. What about? I know I'm kind of weird. Like I'm like maybe if I clean my machine, like everything will be good today.
Oh, for sure. No, I wax my machines.
Oh, you okay?
I take a buffer and car wax, and I try and justify it by saying, "Oh, it's because it prevents the oil from like building up on it. It makes it really easy to wipe them down." But it's also just for looks, and it makes me feel better that I'm maintaining my machines.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
That sounds more accurate.
Um,
New Speedio
no,
shows
another
up. Get out the wax.
Yep.
exactly. No, the service techs are gonna look at me super weird, but
You know what you
that's
need to
fine.
do is you need to start getting as a product, like you know how you can get clear bras for cars cut so that you don't get any chip damage. You should start getting clear bras cut for machines so that you can
Exactly.
put
We
them on
need
a fresh machine and it
for
stays clean.
sure.
Yep.
That's a great idea. Coming soon. Um, along with all of the other products that are coming soon.
Right. Yeah. With all of that extra time you have now, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, no, and then another shop superstition: you always break the tap on the last hole on the last part if you're hand tapping.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
You're like, oh, whew, I've gotten through 40 hand tapped 440 holes. I'm only one more. I can do this, and the tap just shatters on that last hole.
Yep. Or it just shatters backing it out of the last hole. You're like, oh, I made it.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Oh,
All
yep.
right. Ready to go.
It always shatters on the way out on the last hole.
Oh man. And then the last thing he had was not a question, just a comment. He absolutely loves his Cat 40 tool holder bracket. He says it's fantastic. So,
What is that? What is this podcast? Is this called the Within Tolerance, or is this just advertise Easton's Tool Tightening Fixtures podcast?
well, we've plugged yours before because I really love mine.
Yeah,
Like
I love it too.
I went from the garbage one that I
Sure,
built to
sure.
yours.
Keep your guests happy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Then we'll have Fifth Axis on and be like, man, I don't know that Renishield, that thing's just a piece of crap.
Exactly.
um, let's see. Oh, so Tom the Machinist had a question, I think for all of us really, is who makes the best printer and like what's the best.
Prusa.
So he said, yeah, you're a big fan of Prusa. I've got my Ender. Peyton has now an Ender and an Ultimaker. And he says, so is it worth it to buy a high class printer and have it running directly or get a cheaper one and make your own upgrades?
So I also have an Ultimaker. I love my Ultimaker. I love my Maker bots. Um, we've got a bunch of Form Labs printers at work. They're fantastic as well. It really depends on what you're doing. I mean, the Form Labs printers would be my first choice, hands down, if the resin wasn't $150 a liter.
Yeah, that ain't fun. Trust me.
Exactly. And I mean, I think you guys both run Form Labs and you guys know how expensive they are.
Yeah, I don't have to pay for the resin though, so I don't care.
Yeah, Dylan's just over there printing toilet handles and stuff.
You know, had I had more time, I probably would have.
Design some crazy organic shape. They're like, what the heck is on the toilet?
Yeah, I would have spent all day doing what's it called?
Generative design.
Yeah.
Yeah, generative design handle and printed it, and they'd be like, "Yep, that's what Dylan spent all day today doing."
Sorry guys, I can't solve this problem. I gotta go design the toilet handle.
Yeah, yeah, I'll be right out to your machine. I've just got like 10 more minutes of solve left on this.
I
Ideal
gotta
job.
watch it solving the whole time.
Yep.
No, but I mean, so I'm not the best person to ask on the Prusas either. I've got one actual Prusa and one non-actual Prusa.
What do you mean? I thought both of yours
So,
were legit.
kind of. So, I've got a Prusa Mini, which is fantastic. It's got some weird minor issues due to Bowden that is going to happen with any Bowden printer, which is I'm sure Peyton knows about with the Ultimaker, where sometimes it just gets weirdly jammed.
Yep.
Um, that's just a result of Bowden. But the Prusa Mini's accuracy is crazy. The print quality is fantastic. The assembly of the printer took me 10 minutes. It was just an awesome experience. I love my Prusa Mini. My Mark III is not an actual Mark III. In every photo, I could probably register it for warranty and it would go through, etc. But it's not an actual Mark III. I sourced all of the parts from the vendors that Prusa gets their stuff from, printed all of the parts, and then assembled a Prusa based off of their instructions. Um, so that was a total nightmare. I would never do it again, but it was a way to get a Prusa Mark III for like $200.
Jeez.
Yeah. And I actually ended up, so I built a Mark III, but mine's a Mark III S now. And I bought the S upgrade kit from Prusa and put it on my printer. So it's mostly a genuine Prusa. It functions like one, but so I've got friends who have Mark IIIs. The Prusa just runs. It's one of the most reliable printers I've ever ran. And I know Tom has a Mark III, and he loves it. But it really comes down to kind of your comfort level with 3D printing. I mean, a Prusa is still going to be a little bit more of an open source printer,
Yeah,
than
totally.
an Ultimaker or a Formlabs or whatever. But I'd say if you have the budget and you're considering between an Ender 3 and a Prusa, the Ender 3 is fantastic, but a Prusa is going to print better and it's going to be easier and you're going to have support.
I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, I like, and I think it depends on what you want to do too. Like you said, like I bought my Ender because I wanted a project. I was like, I want something that I can throw 20, $30 at here and there and like play around with and learn about and all that stuff. And like, yeah, I wanted a printer, but I didn't need a printer. I think if I needed an FDM printer, I would have just bought a Prusa because they are just so bulletproof.
Yeah, like for example, so we've got a on the Speedio for the I believe Nick from Full Throttle came up with an air gun mount for the side of the Speedio,
Mm-hmm.
and his model is awesome. It looks awesome, but it's like one of the biggest torture tests for printers of all time. It's got some serious overhangs and a big bridging area if you don't put a ton of support in there. And so I was just kind of curious to see what the Prusa Mini would do. And on his part today, when I printed it, it was doing a 2.5 inch bridge, no problem.
Jeez, that's
Yeah,
crazy. I'll
it
send
was
you my file too
fantastic.
because I came up with one. I saw his and then was like, oh well, I need some at work because we've got a couple brothers, and so I made my own model. That's I think similar, but not exactly the same. So I'll
Yeah,
send
I'd love to
you
see
mine.
it.
Yeah, because if it's easier to print, I'll print one.
No, I'm actually
For
holding
Ender
it. It
too.
printed totally successfully. I'm holding it right now.
That's
But
crazy.
I'd love to take a look at your design as well. I mean, that's
Yeah,
part of what's cool is there's a huge community of on Instagram around people buying brothers bare bones and really modifying them, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's no Chinese brother, but that you can get them pretty bare bones.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. I think that kind of answers it. Like Peyton, do you have anything to add about your Ultimaker? I mean, you don't have your Ender running yet, I don't think. So
No, Easton mentioned the Bowden problem with the Ultimakers. That's very true. And I was actually gonna see if you're down to help me get the Ender going tomorrow or something because I need that thing running. But like you said, I think the Ender, I think it's gonna be a cool little machine.
yeah, I think it's
For
hard to
sure.
beat for that. Like if you've got $200 burning a hole in your pocket, you can get into 3D printing with an Ender. And like I was printing the first night without any of the upgrades that I put on mine. But I wanted, like I said, I wanted something that I could screw around with, like that I knew. I like having little projects that don't cost me a lot of money, but have like a lot of involvement. And so, like for some time printing and $10, I added a new filament cooler, and like that was easy and cheap, but it involved me, and that's one thing that I really like about the Enders. But like, I think if you need an FDM printer and you don't have thousands of dollars to spend on an Ultimaker, like the Prusa is the only choice, really.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and I mean, two things. One, coming soon from Protium, you got to make those Ender 3 build plates. Those are sweet. You
Oh,
do need to sell those. You are now legally obligated after posting that on Instagram.
I agree.
Um, and then two, if you buy a Prusa, don't be fooled. Do not buy the kit. It is worth the extra $150 to get it assembled from the factory. That is a nightmare of an assembly. My Ultimaker is also not a genuine Ultimaker, and it is a hybrid between an Ultimaker 1 and 2. And I had an easier time designing that and building that than I did assembling the Prusa. That Prusa is, it's not hard, it's just really tedious, and there's some really frustrating nuts to put into like printed parts.
huh. Never would have thought that, but I guess that makes sense.
It took me like 8 hours, I think.
Oh, geez, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's crazy.
And I guess one other thing, Form 2, I know Dylan's got access to them, but I've got one. Great printer, very niche printer, and it's very expensive, and there's a lot of consumables.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is. But from what I've heard, it is heaps better than the Form 3 so far. So I'm very happy that I ended up with a 2 over a 3.
Yeah.
I don't have enough experience on it to know one way or another. I've got a Form 1 that doesn't work. And then we've got Form 3s at work that seem to work very well.
I've just seen, I don't have a Form 3, but like if you look at the forums, there's like nonstop printer issues. Like, first, none of the engineering resins worked with the first generation of their flexible tanks. And they only just recently fixed that. And then, like, I guess there's a bunch of issues with weird lines in the first like 20 layers after the supports touch. And like, it doesn't affect, if you're making engineering models, it doesn't really affect you. But for people making like model miniatures, or like if Peyton got one, I think that it would really screw up his stuff.
Oh, one other
Yeah.
thing, Form Labs, great customer support, insanely good customer support.
Yeah,
They've,
Same
totally.
with Prusa, actually.
yeah, I mean,
I called them about a random problem I was having one time, and they were like, I like told them about this problem, and it was so unrelated to me, like from an outsider perspective. And they were like, "Oh yeah, that's the Pinda sensor that for the bed." I'm like, "How do you know that that's the Pinda sensor? It only moves up and Z." They're like, "Yeah, that's the Pinda sensor." Like, and they're like, "Do you want a new one? We'll send it right now." I'm like, and they're like, "Put in your serial number," and I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, guys, I will
I'm
be
losing connection.
buying."
Bye. Oh, that's
So
that's awesome. Yeah, I will definitely give it to both companies. They have great support.
all
All
right.
right, so from R Dunn, he asked, ERP system, do you use one? Is it a spreadsheet? Like, how do you do order tracking, planning, all that stuff?
So to answer that question, absolutely not. I am not that organized. I wish I was. I use a spreadsheet that I made in Airtable for all of that, but it's not fantastic, and there are still holes and things that probably my accountant would prefer didn't exist. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's that's definitely in the future. An ERP system would be awesome. Something like Acumatica or any of those other cloud ERPs would be really cool. I'm not sure it's in the budget right now, but I know ERPs are a really neat thing. Um, we use one at work, and it's really handy to be able to pull data and things very quickly. And I know it would be a really big shop improvement. It's one of those things where I'll turn around and I'll talk to Iskar and I'll say, here's $1,000 for some inserts, and then somebody says, oh well, this ERP will be blah 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 per month, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, you're like, that's the next 20, 30 orders worth of inserts every month. I don't know
Yeah,
about that. Like, yeah, I'm right there with you. I'd love one Though I've seen, they can be really terrible too. It's really only as good as the attention you give it. So
Yeah, I mean that might be something to kind of go down the line um, as I kind of grow and if I get like some employees or something where I can maybe spend a little bit more time on something like that.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Another question we got from 523 Industries is if you were giving $100, 1,000, or even 10,000, what would you buy for your shop?
Yeah. So at each level, if somebody gave you $100, what would you buy? What would you buy for your shop for 1,000, and what would you buy for your shop for 10,000 right now?
Well, that's a good question. $100 I would probably put towards um, maybe some just kind of shop improvements, like getting coat hangers or just stupid stuff like that. I mean, it's all the little things. Like a couple months ago, I stopped by IKEA and I just picked up like some IKEA cabinets and things, and I built like a little kitchenette in my office, and it's one of the best $200 I've ever spent. It's just so easy to like grab a plate for lunch or whatever and go into the fridge and grab stuff. It's so $100 doesn't go a long way in a machine shop, but I think what it does do is it does allow you to get some of that, like make a trip to Home Depot and just pick up some of the little like quality of life things.
Totally.
$1,000. That's about what I'm about to spend on pull studs and tool holders for the Speedio. So probably that.
Yep.
$10,000 probing.
There you
Probing for
go.
the Speedio.
See, I don't know what a brother probe costs, but with 10,000, you buy me one, you get one for yourself. Be a great day. Just end it all.
Yeah, so that just means you have even less of an excuse. That means that
You're catching
probing for you,
on.
you get the full package for like $5,000.
Yeah.
Although that being said, with your tool changer, you might really run out of tool space if you have a probe in there.
Fair point.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of a lame answer to those, but
I think
I I
both
think
sides are crazy.
$100 and $1,000 don't really go as far as you might think in a machine shop, and I know 523 knows that as well, as also a shop owner. So
Yeah.
it's
And
it's
another
kind of
Miano.
wild. Yeah, yeah. It's he's got a Miano a few years newer than mine with a completely different control, which is kind of wild.
Yeah. And his is because yours is 30 taper or 40 taper.
Mine's a 30, and mine's got a Fanuc control, and I think his is a 40, and it's got a Yaznak.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about it quite a bit. Um, it's absolutely bizarre. So the only other question we had was from Triple Caution Machine Works, but you covered quite a bit of it. He was just saying that he was impressed by your shop build out and wanted to know how you found the shop, terms of lease, landlord improvements. But you kind of gone over, how you found it and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I can touch a little bit on the terms of lease. So I've got a 5-year lease currently. So I've got this shop for 5 years. Uh, I don't know if I'll outgrow the shop in 5 years, but I hope not. Right now, with the state of everything being kind of taken apart and all over the place, it feels like I've outgrown it. But I know that as the second I sweep the floor and clean it up a little bit, I'll have loads of space. Um, Improvements to the property, it's was really fantastic that I was kind of able to be there at the design stage. They weren't going to put an office in this one; they were only going to put an office in one of the other units, and it was really cool to be able to say, "Yeah, if I can have an office, and then please make the office separate climate controlled." And I got them to put a floor drain in. I got them. They put in one of the best part of the whole shop move. They said, "What electrical do you need?" And I said, "Are you serious?" And they're like, "Yeah, what outlets and things do you need?" And I was like, "Oh, you just mean like normal outlets?" And they're like, "No, like any outlets." I was like, "Well, I need a 3-phase outlet here, 50 amp, I need 30 amp three phase here. I need here, here, here. And I just kept going, and they were like, okay, sounds good. And so they installed they wired everything in before I even moved in, which is why the Speedio is going to be so easy. It'll be really sad to see it go, but the Miano is getting moved, and the Speedio is going right where the Miano is. So it's literally just as simple as kind of doing a plug change. I just unplug the Miano and I plug in the Speedio right there.
That's gonna be awesome, and it takes such little power compared to like your big lathe.
Yeah, my big lathe that's 100 amps of three phase, so that's taken up half of my shop's power.
Yeah, so
Jeez.
you could run 3 Speedios for that.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Like,
Well, that kind of wraps up our questions. Peyton, did you have anything else?
no, I guess Easton, just let everyone know your Instagram, your website, where people can check out your products that you've talked about.
Yeah, so my Instagram is Moria_MFG. I don't post a lot on there lately. I need to be better about that. So, to all of those people out there who are thinking about unfollowing me, you're totally in the right, and I totally understand. I do need to post a lot more on there. My website is my company name, moriamanufacturing.com. On there, you'll see all of my products under the catalog. A few of them are sold out, like the BT30 tool taking fixtures. Those will go back in stock soon. And then I've got a page on there for the contract manufacturing. If you guys, anyone out there is looking for some lathe work, feel free to reach out. And I'd be happy to get you guys a quote.
Awesome. Well, this was episode 60 once again with Easton. Check out his website and Instagram, and we'll be back with Dylan and I next week.